Imagine traveling 5,000 meters below the sea surface. You've arrived at the abyssal plains. The underwater desert where light is gone, food is scarce, yet life doesn't just exist, it thrives. And the deeper you go, the bigger it gets. Once you pass beyond the twilight zone and into the abyss, something shifts. The creatures stop looking like marine animals and start looking like something else entirely. Whether it's crustaceans, jellyfish, or squid, each one is comparatively larger, heavier, and stranger than anything living in the sunlit waters above. A moon jelly that fits in your hand at the surface grows into a 33 feet long behemoth in the deep. A herring that reaches 8 inches in shallow water becomes a 50 feet long oarfish in the abyss. The same animal, completely different scale, and nobody fully understood why for a very long time. This isn't a coincidence. It's a documented phenomenon called deep sea gigantism, and it doesn't just affect one species or one zone. It runs across the entire deep ocean, reshaping animals in ways that still don't have a complete explanation. In this video, we'll look at the creatures it has built, the forces behind it, and why even now, with all our science and technology, the deep sea keeps surprising us. So let's dive in. Imagine a missile the size of a standard boat, but made of pure, powerful muscle. That's the giant squid. Unlike other fish that wag their tails to swim, the giant squid uses jet propulsion. It sucks water into its body and blasts it out, shooting through the dark like a wet rocket.
Over the jellyfish and then spreads those arms wide and engulfs the camera system. It is this alien creature that's got 8 arms and 2 slashing tentacles.
In shallow waters, an average squid is around the size of a large pizza. In the deep sea, beyond 1,000 meters, the same animal grows as large as a 2-story building. If you stood at the top of that building, the squid's tentacles could reach all the way down to the sidewalk to grab you. The largest ever captured was 43 feet long and weighed 270 kilograms. So what happens below 1,000 meters that turns a pizza-sized squid into a 2-story giant? The answer starts with temperature. Below 1,000 meters, the water drops to around 3 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, everything in a living cell slows down. Chemical reactions that normally fire rapidly start taking their time. And cell division, the process that determines how a body grows, slows down with it. Instead of a cell splitting quickly into 2 smaller cells, it sits longer in its current state, absorbing more nutrients, expanding more in volume, building more mass before it finally divides. Do this across billions of cells over years and decades, and the result is a body that grows far beyond what warm water would ever allow. This is Bergman's rule at play. It says the colder the environment, the larger the body it tends to produce. The deep sea is essentially a cold that never ends, and the giant squid is what happens when a body has centuries of it to grow in. But here's the problem with growing that large in the dark. You become visible. You become a target. And in the deep sea, if something is big enough to be hunted, something else evolved big enough to hunt it. That's a sperm whale. It's usually found in shallow waters, but due to its thermal buoyancy, it can visit and reside in the deep sea as long as it desires. It lives at 400 meters, but can dive up to 3,000 meters just to feed on squids. It's the world's largest toothed predator, reaching up to 24 meters in length and weighing almost 50 tons. Their head makes up 1/3 of their entire body. Therefore, they have the largest brain in the entire animal kingdom. But most of its massive head is actually filled with a waxy, oily liquid called spermaceti. Initially, scientists believed this was just an ordinary liquid, but the latest discoveries have found that it's the main factor why whales can live over 70 years in the abyss. This waxy liquid makes sperm whales thermally buoyant. In physics, buoyancy determines whether something sinks, floats, or stays suspended in water. For example, when you hold a rock and a plastic bottle underwater, the rock feels heavy and immediately sinks because its weight is greater than the upward push of the water. The plastic bottle, however, floats because the water pushes it upward more strongly than gravity pulls it down. This happens because objects that have a lower density than water experience a stronger buoyant effect. In sperm whales, the spermaceti fluid adds a buoyant effect. When the whale dives, the temperature and pressure changes cause the spermaceti fluid to become slightly denser. As it cools and thickens, the whale's head becomes heavier, which helps it sink more easily and descend into deep waters. When it's ready to return to the surface, the spermaceti warms up and becomes liquidy again. This makes the whale slightly buoyant, as it lightens its weight. The water's upward push gets stronger than gravity's pull, so the whale rises toward the surface with less effort. The sperm whale solves the deep sea with size and a head full of specialized fluid. But not every creature down here gets to be a 50-ton predator with a built-in diving system. Some have to survive the abyss on almost nothing at all. They aren't blessed with thermal tricks and guaranteed meals. All they have is patience, armor, and a body that learned to run on empty. The giant isopod. It's essentially an ocean version of the pill bug you see in your garden, but instead of being the size of a pea, it's the size of a large suitcase. Its shell is a hard, segmented shield made of calcium carbonate. When it encounters a predator, it curls into a huge ball, a hard, lilac-colored boulder that nothing down there has the jaw strength to crack open. Its eyes carry 4,000 individual lenses, designed to catch the faintest trace of food drifting through the water. Because it's a slow-moving creature, it doesn't prey on other animals. Its food is already present and ever-flowing in the sea. It's marine snow, a slow but constant rain of tiny dead plants, animals, fish waste, and dust that sinks from the ocean's surface into the deep sea. As it falls, it sometimes includes dead whale carcasses, which can feed thousands of deep-sea creatures once they reach the ocean floor. It looks exactly like snow falling from the sky. It's slow, white, and drifting. The difference is that it takes weeks to reach the abyss, and by the time it does, most of its nutritional value has already been consumed by organisms living in the upper zones. So, the giant isopod has no guaranteed meal. Some days, it survives on whatever little nutrition drifts down in the marine snow. Other times, something larger falls, maybe a whale carcass sinking to the sea floor. And when that happens, the isopod eats until it physically cannot move. That single meal can last it 5 years without affecting its health. And this is exactly where Kleber's law comes in. It states that an animal's energy requirement doesn't scale evenly with its body mass. The bigger you are, the less energy you need per unit of weight. So, while a smaller creature would burn through its reserves in days, the giant isopod's size works like a long-term storage house, absorbing as much as possible when food arrives, and then burning it so slowly that months pass before it needs anything again. A giant isopod can survive by needing almost nothing, but not every creature in the abyss has that luxury. Some have to get creative. Take, for example, a Gulper Eel. From a distance, it looks like a giant shoelace, floating through the dark. It lives around 10,000 feet below the surface, which is why we've barely seen it alive. What little footage exists was almost accidental. It looks similar to the fictional monsters we read about in history books. An average gulper eel is 20 feet long, with 5% body and 95% mouth. It's the magic trick of the abyss. Its hunting strategy is built entirely around patience and deception. At the end of its tail, which is 4 times longer than its own head, sits a bioluminescent tip. In the pitch-black abyss, that faint glow looks exactly like a small shrimp drifting through the water. The eel holds its tail close to its face and waits, completely still. When something moves toward the light, the jaw drops open in a fraction of a second, creating a whirlpool effect that pulls everything nearby straight into the throat before the prey registers what's happening. But the jaw isn't just a hunting tool, it's the directing force behind the gulper eel's huge size and survival down there. A gulper eel undergoes allometric scaling. It's when specific parts of a body grow disproportionately larger than everything else. In the gulper eel, this scaling is the entire reason it survives the abyss. The skull is tiny, the brain is tinier, but the jaw spans 1/4 to 1/2 the length of its entire body. The eel didn't grow large in the traditional sense. Its body stayed lean and minimal. What grew was the one thing that mattered most. This positive allometric growth in the jaws helps the gulper eel swallow animals 2 times bigger than its size. In a food desert where you might only see 1 fish a month, being able to eat anything that swims by, no matter the size, is the difference between life and death. The same pattern shows up in other sea creatures too. The fiddler crab grows 1 claw equal to the weight of its entire body. The narwhal carries a tusk that can reach half its own body length. Just a tiny bit of positive allometric scaling in these creatures makes the difference between survival and death in the abyss. However, allometric scaling doesn't appear in all deep-sea animals. Some of them have to build giant societies. The giant Siphonophore. To understand it, you have to stop thinking of it as a single body and start seeing it as an ever-moving, ever-functional giant colony on a string. It's so long that it defies imagination, yet so fragile that it could be destroyed by a human touch. In footage captured during the Ningaloo Canyon's expedition, it looks like a never-ending loop of fairy lights. It has hundreds of tiny individual organisms called zooids. Each zooid has a specific job. Some are only for swimming, some only eat, some only sting, some only reproduce. Together they function as one living rope that can stretch up to 50 meters long. It's twice the length of a blue whale, yet only as wide as a large coin. At its head sits 2 buoyant bells that ripple continuously, providing thrust and steering the colony forward. The body follows behind in slow, rolling waves. What lines its body is what makes it dangerous. Each zooid carries venomous needle-like structures, packed with stinging cells called nematocysts. Any small fish or shrimp that drifts into the colony is instantly paralyzed. It doesn't chase prey, it simply unfurls itself into a vast spiraling curtain and waits for the ocean to deliver something into it. Think of it like an ant colony. Ants have survived for over 100 million years, not because any single ant is powerful, but because they have mastered energy conservation through division of labor. One ant alone cannot hunt, build, defend, and reproduce, but a colony of thousands, each doing only one job, can run an entire civilization on a fraction of the energy it would take if every ant tried to do everything itself. The Siphonophore cracked the same code in the deep sea. No single zooid could survive the midnight zone alone, but connected together, sharing every resource, dividing every responsibility, the colony becomes something the abyss cannot break. One zooid catches food for hundreds. One zooid protects the entire rope. No member wastes energy doing a job that belongs to another. The result is a 50-meter-long giant that costs almost nothing to run. In warm, shallow water, this would be impossible. Predators and temperature would tear the colony apart before it ever reached this size. But down here in the cold, dark abyss, A slow, quiet society can keep adding to itself for years, growing longer and longer without ever needing to build a bigger body to power it.
Scientists have discovered a silly-looking creature in the Indian Ocean, giant Siphonophore, and it's closely related to the jellyfish. Now, this creature could be the largest ever recorded. It has an outer ring that measures about 154 feet.
And the Siphonophore is just one example of how creative the deep sea gets. Because beyond Bergman's rule, slow metabolism, reduced predation pressure, Kleber's law, and energy conservation, there are still more forces shaping these giants. For example, the oxygen-temperature relationship allows tissues to grow beyond what warm water would ever permit. This oxygen-temperature relationship is basically a tentative hypothesis that states cold water has more dissolved oxygen than warm water. If you check a pool's water with your hand, it may feel warm because you're only touching the surface. But when you step all the way in, the water feels dense and colder. That's basic chemistry, right? But in the ocean, oxygen levels don't drop evenly as you descend. At around 200 to 1,000 meters, there's actually an oxygen-depleted zone, a band of water where dissolved oxygen hits its lowest point. Here, the creatures are smaller than the true giants found in oxygen-rich deeper waters. A 1999 study on deep-sea amphipods proved this hypothesis. At 1,000 meters, the average size was 3 centimeters, while in the abyss, at around 6,000 meters, the size exploded to 34 centimeters. Creatures here have evolved physical organs and habits that help them thrive in this oxygen-strapped zone. Red crabs have exceptionally large gill chambers to process low-oxygen water. Many species of jellyfish thrive here because they are mostly water and require very little oxygen to stay buoyant and pulse. Jumbo squids come to rest in these waters because their predators, like sharks, cannot follow them into such suffocating water. If you go deeper than 1,000 meters, something shifts. The water gets colder, denser, and oxygen levels rise again. More oxygen in the water means more oxygen available to tissues. And more oxygen available to tissues means a body can afford to grow larger and still function. This same phenomenon happens in Antarctic waters, where invertebrates grow to massive sizes compared to their tropical relatives. It's called polar gigantism. In the tropics, sea spiders are just a few millimeters in size, but in the Antarctic, they reach the size of large dinner plates, spanning more than 30 centimeters. Because the water is so rich in oxygen, they can grow massive legs that actually house their digestive and reproductive organs, with oxygen diffusing easily through their textured shells. Despite all these factors working together, deep-sea gigantism doesn't follow a single clean rule. The deeper you go doesn't always mean the bigger the creature. At some point, even with cold water, slow metabolism, and abundant oxygen, the environment stops building giants and starts limiting them. To understand how this works, we need to talk about the island rule. It states that in isolated environments, body size shifts based on available resources. When food is abundant and predators are few, smaller animals tend to grow larger over generations because size helps them store more energy and face less risk. But isolate a large animal somewhere food is scarce and the opposite happens. It shrinks. Evolution doesn't reward size for its own sake. It rewards whatever costs the least to run. This is exactly what we see when we compare the midnight zone to the hadopelagic trenches. In the midnight zone, marine snow arrives in steady enough supply to support large bodies. Giant isopods here grow up to 20 inches. But in the hadopelagic trenches, where even marine snow barely trickles through, the same family of creatures grows to just 2 inches. The trench doesn't have enough food to justify a large body, so evolution scaled it back. Dulcibella camanchaca sits somewhere in between, an amphipod that is normally the size of a grain of rice. In the hedapelagic zone, it grows to the size of a hamster. The only adaptation it shows is a hunched back, where it stores what little energy it manages to find. But food scarcity isn't the only thing keeping these creatures small. Oxygen plays an equally important role. At mid-depths between 200 and 1,000 meters, there is a naturally occurring oxygen minimum zone, where dissolved oxygen in the water drops to its lowest point. In this band, bodies simply cannot get enough oxygen to support larger tissues. Growing big here isn't just inefficient, it becomes physiologically impossible. A 2017 study on giant Arctic sea spiders confirmed exactly this ceiling. These animals can't grow beyond 12 inches. Past that point, oxygen supply inside the body starts falling behind demand. Tissues begin to suffer. The cold water and pressure that enabled their size in the first place can no longer compensate for how much a larger body would need. The same conditions that built the giant eventually become the wall it couldn't grow past. The very thing that enabled their size, such as the freezing cold, crushing pressure, and oxygen-rich water, can no longer compensate for how much the body now needs. The oxygen balance that allowed them to grow that large starts working against them. In conclusion, deep-sea gigantism is not a single phenomenon with a single cause, but rather a complex adaptive response to the unique conditions of the deep ocean. Cold water slows the metabolism. A slower metabolism means less oxygen demand. Less oxygen demand, combined with naturally higher oxygen levels in cold, deep water, means the body can afford to grow larger. And once an animal is large, it needs less energy per unit of weight, can survive longer without food, and becomes too big for most predators to bother with. Each factor feeds into the next. The environment doesn't just allow gigantism, it rewards it at every step. But scientists are careful about how definitive they get here. The honest answer is that no one knows exactly which factor matters most, or whether the balance shifts between species. We've explored less than 5% of the deep sea. What lies in the remaining 95% is still beyond our understanding. What we do know is that gigantism down there is almost certainly not one cause with one explanation. It's the ocean's way of solving several problems at once, and arriving at size as the answer every time. If you liked watching this video, consider subscribing to the channel and pushing the like button. I'll see you in the next one.